Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of council. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. Then we'll move on to the approval of the council meeting held December 5th. Looking for mover and seconder, Councillor Jacobs and Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? Carried. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? I see none. There's no court of revision, no public meetings, so we'll move right into reports of staff and delegations. First one is a report regarding the interim tax levy and bylaw. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Each year, administration brings an interim tax levy bylaw to council for your approval. The Municipal Act allows Leamington to charge property owners an interim tax, which in general can be described as 50% of the 2016 property tax assessment value times the 2016 tax rate. That would be for the 2017 calculation. Sorry. More specifically, the interim tax levy is 50% or less of the total municipal levy, the county levy, and the school board levy, plus 50% of the business improvement area charge, 50% of the uptown parking charge, and 50% of the garbage levy. There are some tax charges that are excluded from the interim tax levy, and they instead are charged at the time of the final taxes. Examples are local improvement loan repayments. For example, we have one of those for the Peely-Bevel line. A tile loan repayment, these are for farmers who tile or retile their fields. Capital drain loan repayments. For example, we had a recent one for a farmer who built a bridge over their ditch. And finally, for annual maintenance drainage charges. That would be for ditch cleaning. So those would be not included on the interim tax levy. Each year, administration recommends 2 installment due dates. For 2017, administration recommends Wednesday, February 15th and Wednesday, April 19th, unless there is an amount owing of $200 or less, and then the full amount would be due on February 15th. If a property owner's tax account is current, meaning there is no overdue tax amount, then the owner can register for the 10-month payment plan to pay taxes on the first Friday of January through to October, instead of paying on those installment due dates. The 10-month payment plan takes the interim levy and it splits it evenly across the first 5 months of the plan, which is January to May. Okay. So moving forward to the interest charges, Leamington provides 2 days of grace where no interest will be applied to tax accounts if payments are made on either the Thursday or the Friday following that Wednesday installment due date. On the first Monday after the installment due dates, penalty or interest at 1.25% will be charged on overdue installment amounts. Then on the first workday of each month, where property tax accounts have an overdue amount, interest of 1.25% will be charged again. So administration is requesting that the 2017 interim tax levy bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. Ginny, on the final comment here, the total penalty interest earned on overdue interim, is that money owing or is that money that was collected under this? I guess I'm a little confused as to those figures.
You're referring to page 3 on the financial impact?
Yes, the total penalty.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. That is the interest earned on overdue tax accounts. We haven't necessarily collected it because collections happen over time, and in some cases people do not pay their tax accounts on time, and for example over 3 years, and then we get to the situation of a tax sale. So that happens to be the taxes earned, the interest earned.
Yep.
Also, like on 2014-13, you have 563,600, and 13th 484,1. Are those still on the books, or like does this accumulate, or like I was trying to read that out and I was a little bit confused as to the process which is taking place there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't calculate those numbers as to what was actually collected because it kind of all merges into one. So we could take a look at it over time. I could report to you on that if you would like. Every year I could tell you what was outstanding for the interest receivable.
Okay.
So for example, in 2013, I could tell you what was outstanding that's 3 years old, for tax receivable 2 years old, 1 year old, and current. And I could do that again for 14, 15, and 16. I don't have it here in this report.
And normally, we go a 3-year grace period, do we not? Like, before any type of foreclosures or anything are done to arrears and taxes? Or, like, how does that play out? If we have, like this, that's a significant amount owing, like for 2013, I believe it is here, yeah, or 14, whatever.
If a person has an amount of tax owing that is over 3 years, then we can take tax sale. So what would that mean? Mean that they didn't pay their, if we're talking about the current year of 2016, they didn't pay their 16 taxes, they didn't pay their 15 taxes, they didn't pay 14 taxes. It would have to be a full 3 years owing. If they had just come up to date, meaning that they paid off, say their 13s, paid off their 14s, and they paid off all their penalty, then okay. So it has to be a full 3 years of taxes plus their interest. Is that helping or not?
Mr. Neufeld?
I think the way to look at this is that this is what is owing on interest. Okay? If we had collected it in those years, that's the amount it would be. Eventually, we're going to collect it. Either they will pay it, or it will be through when the tax sale occurs, we'll get our money. But I think the way to look at this is that it is if everybody paid their bill, including their interest, at the time it was due, this is what would have been paid each year. So that's including the tax. Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Hammond, Councillor Hammond, sorry.
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. Jenny, this question may be a little unfair. Maybe I've caught you off guard here, but when do we begin charging or collecting taxes on buildings that are put up for rental properties if they're a new construction? And I'm sure impact has something to do with that, but I just wondered, when do those folks who are building a new building start paying taxes?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand it's on occupancy. Is that correct?
Okay, again, Mr. Neufeld?
My understanding is that that's right on occupancy, but that would set the date by which the amount is then set. Doesn't mean we're collecting it at that point just yet, because sometimes MPAC is behind a bit, and that's a little unfair to say they're behind, but it's that they're not current because there's a process that they have to go through. So upon occupancy, MPAC then sets the amount that they would be paying, and it would start as of that date. So there may be a retroactive payment that is made.
Thank you. And another one, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Jenny, is the 1.25, or I think I calculated 15% a year, is that consistent with what other municipalities charge in interest rates for overdue amounts?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I would have to check that. I don't have that information right now. Would you like me to get back to you?
Jenny, no, I'm sure I can ask that question later and find out. It's not important to get back. I just thought it seemed a little high, but then again, maybe it's not compared to what other municipalities do. Maybe that's the norm.
As far as I know, Councillor, it is the norm. The communities that we talk to in Essex County anywhere are usually right around that point. So, yeah, it's an average, average. Yep. I just want to emphasize that the 2 days grace period referred to in your report, that you guys are really quite serious about that. You know, it's an equal opportunity situation I can find myself in twice last year. So I got my penalty of $18 each time. So I just want everybody to know I left it on my desk. I forgot about it. Anyway, just pointing that out, we do follow the rules here for everyone. Yes, Betty had to pay it one time, yes. So if there are no more questions on this, moved by Councillor Wilkinson, supported by Councillor Jacobs. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Next report is one regarding the borrowing bylaw. And Ms. Campbell again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report presents the 2017 borrowing bylaw. The Municipal Act allows the municipality of Leamington to set up a line of credit to borrow funds on a short-term basis to pay off current obligations while waiting to collect the current year's property tax or other revenue. Historically, Leamington collects the majority of its property taxes on or near 4 installment due dates, which are in February, April, June, and September. To collect property taxes more evenly throughout the year, Leamington also offers a 10-month payment plan to property owners where taxes are collected from January to October on the first Fridays of those months. Should the timing of these cash flows be insufficient to meet Leamington's requirements to pay bills, adoption of this borrowing bylaw will allow Leamington to obtain a line of credit to use on a temporary basis to pay its bills on time. For the past several years, administration has requested a borrowing limit of $20 million, and for 2017, we are requesting the same. To my knowledge and review of the last 10 years, Leamington has not used a line of credit to fund its current obligations, and we currently do not have a line of credit. To avoid interest charges, Leamington prefers to pay current obligations from the municipal bank accounts, and there is no cost to having a line of credit available for use if we wanted to get one. The municipality will only incur interest charges if funds are borrowed from this line of credit. So administration requests that the 2017 borrowing bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Questions? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, supported by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Next report is one regarding the fuel tender. And Mr. Brown?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Mayor and members of Council. This report is on the results of a fuel tender and to recommend the award to the lowest qualified bidder. Administration tendered the 3-year fuel contract for the supply and delivery of fuel to the Public Works, Marina, and Pollution Control Center. As fuel prices are constantly fluctuating, award of the contract is based on the bidder's markup price. 2 bids were received, with Waddock Fuels being the lowest bid, and Waddock Fuels has had this contract in the past with no issues. The approximate financial impact to the municipality would be about $364,000 per year. And the recommendation is that the 2017 to 19 fuel contract be awarded to Waddock Fuels with a fixed markup rate of 1 cent per liter above the rack pricing over the 3-year duration of the contract. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Ken, on the marine fuel, is that marine fuel? Like, is that lead-free that we use? I know before we did that, but you don't specify this in this particular contract?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, it is. I did check with Ronan to make sure we had the right fuels that we're specifying. So in the tender, that was, it is unleaded and 0% ethanol. So it is a choice for marina fuels.
And the total of 364,000, is that taking into account, like the marina sales would generate revenue, but does that go somewhere else? Is that like bookkeeping and bookkeeping 101 or something?
Yes, yeah, it is a cost to us. We have to pay for it, but we do have some revenue streams as well, like from the marina. So that is all captured, I guess, in the books, but that's what the upfront cost is, but some of that we do make back.
All of it.
Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. The next report is one regarding Pathways to Potential Agreement, and Mr. Simons.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm here tonight to request authorization for the municipality to enter into and execute a contract with the City of Windsor for the Pathways to Potential service. The P2P program was established as a youth and seniors recreation affordability initiative. The purpose is to allow eligible children, youth, adults, and seniors to participate in any one program offered per session through the Recreation Department at 10% of the program cost. Program funding cannot be used towards assistance with equipment costs associated with the programs. These programs include the list of activities identified in the report. Only those families that meet the low-income cutoff guidelines as established by Stats Canada are eligible for the funding. The municipality is responsible for submitting quarterly reports to the City of Windsor, outlining information such as number of participants in the program and the costs borne by the municipality to provide the service and administer the funding program. The contract allocates approximately $7,200 per month in funding for a total of approximately $86,000 per year. As mentioned in the report, it is recommended that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the 2016 and the 2017 Pathways to Potential service contracts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Questions from council? What are council's wishes then? Moved by Councillor Hammond. Oh, I just need a seconder and then I come back. Councillor Jacobs supports. Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes, Your Worship. Terry, good program, but I'm just wondering why this wouldn't be presented more towards budget time. Isn't this going to affect our numbers for 2017?
So the execution of the contract is required for the 2016 season that's already passed. And then requesting it for the 2017 once the new budget year has come to fruition. It shouldn't affect any forecasted numbers. I guess it may if they don't continue the program, it may affect the numbers, but at this point we have a historic I guess revenue stream that we've already kind of factored in annually.
Any further questions? Okay, so where does are you wondering where the 89,000 comes from? Is that what so is that through the City of Windsor? The 86,097?
Yes, they give us $7,200 I guess budget per month for 12 months, and that gets you the 86,000. We don't necessarily use it all depends on the amount of participants of the program.
And that's why it doesn't affect our budgeting process. We're not paying it, no.
Sorry.
Okay, nope, worries.
Okay.
Any further questions? All in favor of that recommendation then? Opposed? Carried. Final report is one regarding delegation of authority. Ms. Orton?
Thank you. This report is before you tonight, and it involves two different documents. One is a proposed delegation of powers and duties policy, and the second is a delegation of powers and duties bylaw. The Municipal Act requires that a municipality adopt and maintain a policy with respect to the delegation of its powers and duties. And sections 9, 10, and 11 of the Act authorize a municipality to delegate its powers and duties under the Act or any other act to a person or a body subject to certain restrictions. The powers referred to in the Act are divided between administrative powers, which includes all matters required for the management of a municipality that do not involve discretionary decision-making, and legislative powers, which include all matters where council acts in a legislative or quasi-judicial function, including enacting bylaws, setting policies, and exercising that decision-making authority. The restrictions upon the delegation of a municipality's powers and duties are found in the legislation, and the following general rules apply. A delegation may be revoked at any time without notice. A delegation may provide only that the delegate can exercise the delegated power, or that both the municipality and the delegate can exercise the power. A delegation may be made subject to conditions and limits. The Act indicates that a municipality is only authorized to delegate legislative powers under the Act and the Planning Act, and such legislative powers may be delegated only to certain bodies or an individual who is an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality. No delegation of a legislative power can be made to an individual unless that power delegated is of a minor nature. The purpose of the Delegation of Powers and Duties policy is to provide guidance to council to determine whether it's appropriate to delegate powers or duties to another body or to an individual. The proposed policy provides that council may delegate any administrative power and any legislative power according to the following principles: that the legislative power being delegated is under the Municipal Act or under the Planning Act. It's being delegated to one or more members of council or a council committee, to a body having at least 2 members, of whom at least 50% are either members of council or individuals appointed by council, or a combination of both. If the legislative power is being delegated to an individual who is an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, that legislative power is minor in nature, having regard to the number of people, the size of the geographic area, and the time period affected by an exercise of the power. The delegation will provide for the efficient management of municipal operations and respond to matters in a timely fashion, and there is appropriate accountability assigned to each delegation. The policy indicates that the delegation of those powers and duties shall be set out in a delegation of powers and duties bylaw, which shall be reviewed every term of council. The proposed policy also provides guidance to delegates when exercising any delegated authority. It indicates that a delegate must ensure the following: the scope of the delegated power or duty shall not be exceeded. Any condition or limit placed on a delegated power or duty is applied. Any associated procedures or any other applicable policies be consistently and equitably applied. An expenditure related to the exercise of the power or duty has been allocated within the current year's budget. The power or duty will not be exercised if, having regard to the nature of the power or duty and the circumstances of its exercise, the power or duty is best exercised by council. And if, as a condition of the delegation, council is to be provided notice of its exercise, such notice be provided in a biannual report to council. So in consideration of the requirements of the Act and the principles found within the proposed policy, the proposed bylaw provides that all powers and duties delegated by council under the bylaw also remain with council. Any delegation of a power or duty may be revoked by council at any time without notice. A delegation of a power or duty under the bylaw to an individual who is an officer or employee of the municipality is a delegation to that individual who is also in a position on a permanent, temporary, or acting role. A delegation of the power or duty under the bylaw to an individual who is an officer or an employee of the municipality is also a delegation to the chief administrative officer. And a delegation of a power or duty under the bylaw to the clerk is also a delegation to any person appointed as a deputy clerk. And similarly, any delegation of power or duty under the bylaw to the treasurer is also a delegation to any person appointed as a deputy treasurer. In the report, you'll note that I have 3 columns. Column 1 is the list of the delegated power or duty. Column 2 is the individual to which it is recommended that power or duty be delegated. And column 3 indicates the condition or limit placed on the delegation. So I will summarize the chart, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But you'll note that there's 3 suggested delegations to the treasurer, which relate to the collection of accounts receivable and the authorization of legal proceedings to collect, or the authorization to write off accounts receivable under $10,000. Also, the authorization of setting supplementary tax due dates. Below that is suggested delegations to the clerk, which relate to executing letters to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission regarding proposed liquor licenses. There are suggested delegations to the Director of Legal and Legislative Services relating to the settlement of legal proceedings that are covered by a policy of insurance that are below the insurance deductible, settlements of legal proceedings that are not covered by a policy of insurance, limited to those amounts payable being less than $100,000. The execution of quitclaim deeds when there is no municipal interest in property. The execution of agreements of purchase and sale with the condition that the transactions are subject to the approval of council. And then following that, the execution of documents required to complete the acquisition or disposition of land if it has been approved by council. The authorization and execution of agreements of purchase and sale and related documents required to complete acquisitions of land for street widening and other infrastructure works. Executing documents related to the conveyances of reserves and easements if they are required as conditions of subdivision or site plan agreements. Demands for payment under letters of credit. There are delegations to the Director of Infrastructure relating to encroachment agreements. Appointing engineers under the Drainage Act. Temporary road closures. There are also delegations to the Manager of Recreation regarding agreements related to the use of municipal facilities. Delegations to Director, Manager, Supervisor of Departments purchasing goods and services in accordance with the purchasing policy. Grant applications to upper levels of government and associated funding agreements. Suggested delegation to the Director of Departments overseeing the projects. Delegations to the Fire Chief regarding the designation of fire routes and minor amendments to the emergency plan. And lastly, delegations to the Manager of Planning Services or the planner, deeming applications submitted under the Planning Act as complete, approvals of site plans and site plan agreements. Those suggested delegations would expedite the planning process and eliminate the need for meetings related to the commencement of those processes. Authorizing the execution of community improvement plan agreements. And then lastly, executing or releasing any agreement required as a condition of a consent provisionally granted by the Committee of Adjustment. You'll note that some of these delegations have been previously provided by council in various policies and resolutions. This document consolidates some of those previous delegations, but there's also some new delegations. And as we indicated within the financial impact of the report, that there's no direct financial impact upon the municipality. However, it's anticipated that there would be a decrease in administrative time spent preparing the reports that have been historically brought to council, authorizing administration to take steps in a process or to approve the execution of routine agreements. And it's also noted that it's anticipated if council does proceed to pass this bylaw and approve those delegations of authority, that the next report being brought to council would be to amend our procedure bylaw to reduce the amount of council meetings from 3 to 2. And that would be brought later for council's consideration. So the recommendation is that council adopt the delegation of powers and duties policy and pass a bylaw to delegate those powers and duties as listed in the report.
Thank you very much. Very lengthy report. Questions? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. I like some of this. So all the drainage issues now will not come before us anymore. I see that the Director of, or the Superintendent of Drainage will take care of that.
No, it's only in connection with two processes, and it's only to appoint the engineer. And that has been going on for quite some time. Those previous delegations were included in two policies. One was actually to delegate the authority to the clerk, and that was subdelegated to the director a number of years ago. So that's not changing any of our current drainage processes.
Thank you. Also now with site plan approvals. Now, though, like we have quite a bit of those come before us, and they're always a recommendation of the manager of planning anyway. So I think that's a great move. There's no need for us to be involved. But how would we follow up on something like that if we have, as counselors, we receive these phone calls and so forth? Do we still have the ability to look into them or question them, or on behalf of anyone, or direct them to someone to have their answers or questions answered?
I think it's always most appropriate if you can address inquiries to the appropriate administrative personnel who can properly address them. My example in connection with site plans is if you are hearing some concerns about development, the best approach is to direct those concerns to administration, who can either meet with the individuals or hear their concerns and address that through the site plan process. One part of the policy does allude to the fact that administration would always have the opportunity to bring a matter to council if they feel that the matter is of a contentious nature and that it's best addressed through council. So that would always be something that would be open to administration to do.
Okay, I appreciate it. It's a great report, and I think some of the that you plan to implement here is long overdue, and I think it's great, and it takes a lot of time away, as I said, that's involved by administration, putting all these reports together, and they come in here and they're pretty basic, as far as we're concerned, to give the go-ahead to. So I think it's great, and I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Hammond, any question?
Your worship, thank you. Ruth, my question was very similar to Councillor Jacobs in the fact that, in concerning planning a lot, we get a number of questions, which leads me to my question, because even under your department, which is legal services, if you were to settle a claim, would we somehow be notified of that? I mean, it would defeat the purpose if you had to put out a report every week and tell us exactly, and including planning, what you've done and what you haven't done. But some of the more important ones, it would be nice so that we had an answer for those that do come forward and ask us a question. If we had an answer, for the questions that might come up. And I wonder if sending out an email or something might keep us up to speed about what's going on.
You'll note in the list of conditions or limits, there are some limits or some conditions that have been noted specifically related to site plan agreements, where council would be notified on a biannual basis as to the ones that have been approved, so that you are in the loop, so to speak, as to the development that's taking place in the municipality. I didn't put those limits on a lot of the delegations. The ones that I felt would be important to council, typically council only receives very limited information regarding the claims against the municipality, largely because that's handled by our insurance company, and they are the ones resolving the claims. There's very few that are minimal, so those are not necessarily matters that are reported to council on a regular basis, although there's amounts in the budget in acknowledgement that we do have some minor claims that are settled on a fairly routine basis.
Okay. Myself, I looked at the list of these things, and I think like 90% of these are already being done under this process anyway, so it's not a huge change. And like Councillor Jacob said, in regard to the site plan part of things, if we can speed up that process for the investors and builders, that's, I think, is our ultimate goal to have happen here. And if there are concerns, I always say to all members of council, it's the CAO you need to talk to, and if he doesn't have the answer, he'll get the answer or tell you who to get the answer from. And it should be as easy as that. The proviso is in there too, that if it becomes a contentious item, it can come to council for our consideration in public meetings. And ultimately, if we decide we don't like this whole process, we can change this at any time. So, yep, Mr. Neufeld.
Yes, thank you. It will allow us to speed up the process, the planning process. But what I really wanted to speak to was the issue of potential contentious issues. Administration also wants council's input when there are contentious issues. So I think that we've demonstrated over the last couple of years that the teamwork between council and administration is important. This will help streamline things, but if council believes something is contentious, if we believe something is contentious, we want to be able to bring it to council for your input. So I think that we just want to make sure you understand we're not looking to take council out of these issues. If it's not contentious, let us continue to do our jobs.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? And carried. There were no matters for approval or consideration, and we didn't have a closed session, so we'll move on to consideration of bylaws. Ms. Percy?
Bylaw 5916 being a bylaw to provide for a maintenance schedule of assessment for the Lamarche Creek and William Young Drain in the municipality of Leamington, County of Essex. This is third and final reading. Bylaw 81-16 being a bylaw to levy and collect a share of the cost of the repair and improvement of the Two Creeks Drain as initiated by the Corporation of the Municipality of Chatham, Kent. Bylaw 8216 being a bylaw to levy and collect a share of the cost of the replacement bridge over the Irwin Drain as initiated by the Corporation of the Town of Kingsville. Bylaw 8316 being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy and to provide for the payment of taxes. Bylaw 8416 being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet the current expenditures of the municipality. Bylaw 8516 being a bylaw to delegate powers and duties. And bylaw 8616 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held December 12th, 2016.
So I'm looking for a mover and seconder. Councillor Hammond, moving. Councillor Wilkinson, support. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. There were no notices of motion circulated, so we're into open session. Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. Councillors Verbeek and Jacobs and Dunn and myself all attended the grand opening of the Superstore on Saturday. It's undergone quite a transition. Once we were able to get Verbeek and Jacobs out of the newly formed wine and whiskey area, we were... I think the thing that I was impressed most with is now that if you wanted to call ahead for those that are not able to make it, you can call ahead, order your groceries. All you have to do is send a cab or pull up out front, and they'll deliver it right out to your car for you and pick it up. So, yeah, it was really a nice change to see down there.
That's good. Thank you very much for representing the municipality, all of you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Worship. It's just a comment. Something I've noticed I've been watching for about the last 2 months now, and I emailed Mr. Sharon on it about a week ago or so, was our garbage containers uptown. And just as expected, Rob was well aware of it and has been working on it, and I really appreciate that he's talking with our uptown merchants regarding it. We continue to have abuse down to uptown of our garbage containers. Short of slobs, pretty much, are abusing the garbage containers downtown. I watch these things on a daily basis. I'm so thankful that Rob, chooses to be proactive, and he sends out our resources to go and pick them up almost daily. It is a waste of our resources, though. I urge the people, the users of the merchants uptown or the users of the uptown, be proactive in your efforts. If you see continuous abuse, and I think it's pretty easy to figure out because they're always the same type of, it's always the same area of garbage cans that are often abused. Be proactive. Call into the town. Use the City Works program. You need to, you need to get proactive in this if we're going to make changes downtown. I understand that we have a report coming here in the new year that may help curb. I don't know how we're going to do that, to tell you the truth. I really don't. But I urge the people, the users of downtown, it's, I'm sure, very easy to figure out who is abusing them. They need to be proactive and try and get this fixed. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Anything else? Real quick for me, just the one event that I was able to attend this week was on Friday morning. The Leamington Chamber of Commerce, a number of council members were there too, but the Leamington Chamber of Commerce was able to announce their success in obtaining a $75,000 grant from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. With the effort of looking at creating a, I don't know if I want to call it a greenhouse center of excellence or an agriculture center of excellence here in the municipality of Leamington. So it was covered by the media. And I wish them great success in this. I think it's the right step forward. I know we've tried generating that interest in the past, so hopefully this group can take a real strong lead on this and get the focus done. So, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And I had forgotten when I mentioned the other councillors that our Economic Development Officer, Janine, was also in attendance at the Superstar, along with our new leaders of the Salvation Army. They should be mentioned as well.
Good, very good. All right, statements, members, non-debatable. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Hammond, all in favor? And carried.